I had been debating between stingrays and sharks for this part. Sharks would have been easier to route out because the tail on the stingrays actually took me a couple test pieces before it turned out. I went with hickory for this project, and if there's one thing I am learning, it is that the speed and feed rate for every wood is different. Overall though, this didn't take as long as I was expecting. Everything included prepping the wood on the table and switching out the router bits. Each side took about an hour. This was a first for me. I was not really sure how well the plastic would hold up, and most of the videos I had watched show them making an entire casing around the project. But I just used 2 leftover melamine strips to hold the flow. I guess I had a lot of trust in those 10-pound weights to keep the resin from flowing out on the sides. The size of this piece is 17 by 50 inches and it is a 1/2 inch thick. It ended up turning out to be 15 pounds. This UV curing resin is what I used to fill in the gaps around the melamine, which was where I was most nervous about the resin flowing out. I literally just used my UV light from my nail kit. It worked just fine. It took a couple of minutes. This is UV epoxy from Ecopoxy, and this is my favorite to work with on all aspects. I have worked with this resin for a couple of years now, and I finally committed to buying 40 liters of it because I have a whole lot more projects coming. This resin, it doesn't smell. If you've worked with resin before, oftentimes the smell can be awful, even if you are wearing a mask. Here you can see I have no need to wear a mask. It doesn't smell at all. Also, if you're going for that crystal clear finish, you will not get that with the cheap resin. I am actually becoming a distributor for Ecopoxy, and more info will be coming on that soon. For this, it is a 1-to-1 ratio mix, and I like to use hot water to help activate it while I mix. And the pigment here goes a long way. Honestly, I am more likely to use too much than too little. This is the part I was holding my breath on. I was not super confident that there would be no bleed into the wood. I knew I was going to be sanding it, but there was still that question mark in the back of my head of, is this going to be a disaster? I hate wasting resin, and when I see all this extra, it's hard for me to not consider it a waste. But what I'm learning is, if I am slightly under on the resin, that will mess it up too, and it will cost me another day of waiting to work on the project. I started off here using 80 grit. Knowing what I know now, I could go even lower and save me some time. As you can see, some of the resin flowed underneath when I poured, so I need a better system to keep the wood down. I worked my way to 400 grit, and in between sanding, I spritzed the table with water and let it completely dry before moving on to the next grit. Here was another point of no return. This was the finish I decided to go with. It was a pricey one, but everyone said it was worth it and that it goes a long way. It is a 3-to-1 ratio. Everyone was using a scale, but I preferred this method with the disposable syringes. Also, there were no instructions on the box. All that it said was how dangerous it was in about 8 different languages, but nowhere on the box did it say what the ratio was. You have to mix it thoroughly for the activating agent, and it's best to use gloves and glasses. After using the flat edge, I used the sponge to spread it out even more and pick up the leftover residue. Everyone agreed that the downfall with this coating is if you do not pick up the residue well enough afterwards. They said you have about 15 minutes to get all the residue off before you need to be done. It is tempting to touch it here, but don't. Leave it there for at least a couple of hours. I am super pleased with how this turned out. From the concept to the application, there were so many things that could have gone wrong because there were so many parts to this that were new to me. I'm going to leave this piece as is. It could be easily made into a wall piece or turned into an entryway table. What do you think would be better? If you are interested in this piece, I have it available on my Etsy, and the link is down below. If it is gone by the time you get there, there will be another listing. It will be made to order, and it won't be this exact one. What should I do next?